Hi, and welcome to another edition of the NPC Sports Podcast. My name is Ben, and I am joined, as always, by Dakota and Logan. How you guys doing this morning?
I'm doing all right. I had a long week last week. I went down to Greenville, South Carolina for a wedding, and my flight home got canceled because of all that weather in the South. But I got a good night of sleep last night, and I'm back to 100%.
You survived
I did, and
all
also while I
those
was down,
inconveniences.
yeah, and while I was down there, I checked out the Greenville Drive Stadium that has the little mini green monster there. Went and stood on top of it. Great park. Great minor league town too.
Minor league
Love that.
stadiums are just lovely, especially in the South.
That one's as good as it gets because like their Green Monster's cool. It's a really good view up top. And the cool thing about that park is it's built across this. First of all, Greenville is just awesome. It's a great like sort of like up and coming city with good dining and bars and stuff. But the stadium is built across the street from Shoeless Joe Jackson's house because he's from Greenville, and like they turned his house into a museum, and like the whole district that's around the park, the dining hotel district is called like Shoeless 408 or something because he hit 408 as a rookie. So it's kind of all themed around him in cool baseball history. So, you know, just shout out to Greenville Drive in that whole area because if you like baseball and the Red Sox, it's a cool spot to hit if you can.
Logan, how about
Yeah, I'm
yourself?
do.
Any
I'm.
national travels you want to share?
I have not. No. I don't have any particular Southern takes that I care to share on this podcast. So
I
yeah,
do.
I'm good. Okay. No, I know you love the South, Cody. Um, yeah, I'm all set. I'm doing great. Thank you.
It's a lovely place to visit.
Yep. To visit. To
Visit.
visit
To
for a
visit.
day
Savannah.
or two.
Savannah is an elite top five U.S. city if anyone ever gets the chance. Savannah, Georgia.
Any uh any union states that you enjoy visiting or
Not many.
Yeah,
Uh,
they got all the culture in the divorce. Um, all right, let's bring it back. Speaking of the South, down south, in Florida, um, we've got Fort Myers. The Red Sox roster lineup appears to be kind of coming together, and it does seem that the way things are tracking, Rafael Devers is the Red Sox new designated hitter, at least if opening day were today, and Christian Campbell seems to be tracking towards being the second baseman. After all that's gone down this spring, what is your guys' take on where we see the Red Sox positioned positionally with a little over a month to go to the season starting?
it is not the best lineup they could trot out, is my thing. Um, yeah, I saw the look, Dakota. Have you seen the way Yoshida's been hitting? Because the way it's constructed right now, Yoshida doesn't hit at all, and he's probably been their steadiest hitter during the spring. So honestly, the best situation would be Campbell beginning in AAA, Bregman at second, and Devers at third. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. So now you have a weird situation where it's like, well, are you going to try and dump Yoshida's contract for pennies on the dollar when he might actually be a useful bat right now? So I actually think the X factor in all of this is now Yoshida as opposed to Campbell or Bregman or David Hamilton or Devers or anyone like that because they've pretty much eliminated the glove component of Yoshida's game. So
We've eliminated the
he's
glove compartment.
yeah, I mean, he was limited, but left field in Fenway, like he would have been fine enough. I'm not saying he's going to be better than Roman Anthony or Jaron Duran would be there. But in any event, you have essentially pigeonholed this guy to where he can only be your DH. And now with your roster construction, you've pretty much done the same thing with your best offensive player. So, there's going to be a logjam somewhere, and I have not seen enough out of Christian Campbell to feel comfortable with him being your everyday second baseman. I mean, the what was it, like 0 for 9 with 4 strikeout stretch, something like that. Like I know he hit a bomb in the spring breakout game, but Yeah, I don't think that this is necessarily them trotting out the best iteration of this lineup right now.
So a couple things for me on Yoshida. I think, they already said he's going to start the season on the IL. So because he's clearly not ready to play the field. And I think the problem there is like, yeah, you could pencil him in as the everyday DH, but that makes them lefty heavy. And, it's like you might need somebody else to play DH, and I don't know. I just don't know, like, if I don't know how Yoshida play, like, if he's gonna be a relatively close to everyday player, which he's being paid as such, then he needs to play in the field sometimes. And if that happens, then you need to slide someone else into DH. Like, I don't know. I just think he's an awkward fit. Um, and he's not. They need him to. If he's going to be in the roster, he needs to play the field at some point, and it sounds like he's not ready to do that because of the shoulder. So I think that's a big part of it. But on Campbell, you know, I agree. Like, he has not played his way onto the roster. At the same time, like, I'm not gonna, as far as him at the plate, I'm not gonna overreact to a bad spring. He's been better in the second half of spring than he was at the beginning. And I think more than anything, it's about like his approach at the plate. At the beginning, he was just swinging at everything and he was clearly pressing and wasn't, having good quality professional at bats. That's absolutely changed over the past few weeks. The results haven't been wildly better, but I think he looks far more comfortable. But for me, like, the reason why I'm not sold on this is defensively. I know everyone took their pants off a couple days when he made three diving plays, but for the most part, he looks very uncomfortable at second base. Like, I think he has all the tools to be a good second baseman, but he only played like 30 games at second in the minors or something like that. Last year when Meyer got hurt, they moved him to short rather than keeping Campbell at second base, and I think they just should have kept him there. And I think it's shown during spring. He doesn't look like ready to go at second base. And I don't think, so for me, I'm like, I wouldn't put him there. I would start with David Hamilton because he's the superior defender. And when Campbell's ready, he'll come up. But I just think he needs more time at second base. And I think the Red Sox need to get off to a fast start. So I don't know if they can afford to have a guy, figuring out at second and potentially being a liability, which I think he could be. But sort of my final thought on this is that I'm not really buying this report yet either. I don't think it's a coincidence that, we get this note from Mass Live about Campbell leading the second base job a day before Cora leaves open the possibility of Marcelo Meyer being the second baseman. Like, I think there's a possibility that this is Cora trying to, like, see how he can motivate guys, see how guys respond to, all right, now Christian, like, maybe you're reading the press clippings and you're the second baseman. Do you keep your foot on the gas or do you take a step back? Like, it's not past Cora to sort of test these guys in this way and see what he can get out of them, when at the end of the day he might just go to David Hamilton. So I'm not like, I don't think this is over by any stretch. But if it is over, I have questions too, because I don't think Campbell is ready to play defensively at second base.
That's interesting.
This is
Yeah, I didn't think about the motivational factor. But I think you guys both raised really good points that by having Campbell at second, you have really neither your strongest defensive lineup or your strongest offensive lineup in place. I mean, they have a bunch of second basemen who can't play second base. Vaughn Grissom is awful. David Hamilton is, he's a 4A player. Christian
He's better than
Campbell.
4A. He's a good player.
That's yeah, okay. I mean, when I say 4A, I mean a guy who is useful to fill spots. He's
a
not an
high-end bench option.
yeah, he's not an everyday major leaguer, but he is a guy that plays 2 or 3 times a week in various roles. And then you have Alex Bregman, who I don't even think spent any time at second base after the expectation was he was going to play second base. I'm kind of, I agree with both of you, even though I think both of you are kind of on different ends of this. I would prefer to see them either go with the lineup that is maybe shaky defensively, but has the best offensive potential, or not worry about second base being an offensive nothing and have someone who is more solid at second base. But instead, it's just kind of like, okay, well, we're not going to be very strong up the middle defensively, and we're also potentially not going to get anything from this position offensively. I don't see where the benefit is in kind of splitting the baby that way.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, you go, Logan. Here.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I don't like I feel like I haven't seen this much anywhere, but like, why not Rafaela at second? Like, you have enough outfielders, and especially if you think like Abreu's not going to be ready on time, Ref Snyder's a perfectly fine replacement.
So you
Sounds
would
like
have
Abreu is going to be ready though. I think that's the answer there is
so you would have Duran in center
no,
under this.
I think
I'd
you're going to
probably
have
have
Durant left, Rafael or center
No, I'm
and
saying under Logan's thing. If
under my
Rafaela's at
thing.
second,
Yeah, I'd probably say Duran in center, Ref Snyder in left, and
no, it'd be Roman
Abreu in
Anthony in left.
right.
You're not starting the season if there's an opening in left field, you're not making it Ref Snyder over Roman Anthony, who absolutely is ready. I think that's been
I mean, I agree with that, but you have to. I mean, if it's Roman Anthony, I'd be perfectly fine with that. But I'm just saying that doesn't. For some reason, I'm skeptical that they're going to, especially if Christian Campbell is going to be their starting second baseman. I don't think like I've kind of arrived at the place where I think they would take one of those guys and
I
enter the
agree.
year with them, envisioning them as an everyday player. But like they have enough options at second base. And this is something Ben and I have said before is like Campbell's rise was insane. Like he was this time last year, he was not on the radar like he is now. And so now we're going to try our damnedest to get this guy into the big league roster to be your everyday second baseman when you haven't, when he, to your point, Dakota, has very limited experience there, has already been spotty in Grapefruit League pitching. Like, again, has gotten better. He can obviously torch minor league pitching, but it's like, I just don't see. And David Hamilton is a reliable option, and Rafaela can play there. So to me, it's just like, why are you putting yourself in that position? I would rather, if we're taking one of the young guys right now, I'd rather it be Roman Anthony. And then, yeah, you do Anthony Duran and Abreu in the outfield, or Anthony Rafaela and Abreu. But I just, this idea that like they have to get Campbell there, they have no other options at second base. It's just, they were so weird with the media all freaking spring. They're saying guys will try here, but then they don't take reps there, and it's this and that. And so it's like, I don't even know how far I can hitch my wagon to the like chorus just trying to motivate guys. I'm getting to the point now where it's like it just feels pretty freaking disorganized.
Yeah, I think with Campbell, like if it's about Campbell versus like Yoshida, as you were saying earlier, which I don't think that is what it is for them, but let's just if we're talking about what's their best lineup, I think at that point, and okay, of course, there's a possibility that Campbell comes up and really struggles, but I think they're clearly really confident in him that that's not going to be the case. That he'll at least be like he'll be solid and then eventually turn into who they think he can be. And so at that point, it's like, well, Yoshida offers probably better on base and a higher batting average immediately, but Campbell will make up the difference just in pop, more doubles, more home runs. That so then you just kind of which one would you rather have? Plus he balances the lineup. So I in that sense I get it. It is this is probably super unfair to Christian Campbell, but on the notion of guys who are kind of quieter and maybe got accelerated too fast. Sometimes I think of Jeter Downs when I think of Christian Campbell, and it's not a good comp because Christian Campbell's so much better than Jeter Downs. But
It's a terrifying comp.
well, no, but I say that because in the Red Sox, a lot of people like forget about like everything about Jeter Downs in that deal, and he when they Red Sox, he was the prize of that deal.
Intentionally, in some cases, they forget about him.
Yeah. Well, he was the real prize of that trade, and he was supposed to be like a fringe sort of all-star, greater than the sum of his parts shortstop, and he was supposed to be really good, but then he missed a year of development because of COVID, and a lot of different guys reacted to that differently. He sort of torpedoed, Jay Groom torpedoed. Other guys, they were fine. Like Jaron Duran used it to refine his swing and took off. Like it just wasn't a one-size-fits-all approach. But then when they came out of that, they assigned Jeter Downs to AAA when he'd only played a couple of games in AA, and he struggled really bad. And he was terrible. And then it became apparent that this is a guy who was really hard on himself. He didn't handle struggling well. He put a lot of pressure on himself and got nervous. And that was something the Red Sox missed in the evaluation when they traded for him. They looked at the tools and not that he's a bad guy, but how does he handle if he's going to struggle in Boston? And so I just wonder, Christian Campbell, like I don't know what his personality is like, but he seems like a quieter guy. How is he going to handle it if he comes up and struggles mightily with the Red Sox. Like I just think they need to put more thought into something like that because not everybody just rebounds from it. So they have to be sure that he'll be all right. And one final note on David Hamilton, I just pulled up a story from Sean McAdam from last week where he quoted a scout gave him takes on like basically everyone on the roster. And on David Hamilton, he said, on a championship team, he's probably a guy off the bench, but on a team that's maybe in the middle of the pack, yeah, he's an everyday guy. So that's just one scout, right? I'm not saying I agree with him, but I do think David Hamilton might be better than we give him credit for.
So where my head actually just went, just thinking about comps with that, is Blake Swihart.
I thought of that too. Yeah.
And it's like, why are we so hell bent on making sure that this guy makes the opening day roster at a position that he's kind of like, it's not really his primary position. Like he can play it, but it's not his primary position, which that's a departure from like, hey, I know you're a career catcher, Blake Swihart, but go play left field.
Well, that's what I was thinking when they were talking about moving Campbell to left field because the second base was blocked. I'm like, what happened the last time we said, well, you'll figure it out.
Just started cycling guys through left field, thinking that they could figure it out. Yeah. Yeah, well, so, and that's what leads me to the point of like, why does he have to break camp with the big team? Like, they have David Hamilton. They could put Rafaela there. A layer on the Yoshida thing, too, is like, I don't freaking believe that there's an issue with his shoulder. Like, have you seen the guy swinging a bat? Like, how many guys?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything.
I know, like Tommy John surgery, you can have that and still hit and all that stuff, but it's like,
that's all the evidence.
Well, is it? Because after last year, there were clearly medical disagreements. The Red Sox were pissed that he was getting second opinions. He clearly didn't feel right. And so I think that the player and the team could be on totally different pages at this point about the guy's health. So that's why I'm sitting there watching like, well, they got no issues slotting him into the 5-hole and letting him hit nukes. So it's like, but this guy has to end up on the IL. Like it's just this foregone conclusion because of this shoulder issue for a team that has made no bones about the fact that they don't want him in the field. Like there is a world where if Devers has to be your DH, then you can put Yoshida in left field and it's fine. And you can have Rafael at second. You have Yoshida in left. Duran in center, and in such a case, it would be either Abreu or Roman Anthony in right. I don't think there's an issue with that, and I would rather see something like that than force feeding Christian Campbell, who was playing in high A year ago. Like, this whole thing just feels like they could end up railroading a lot of guys' careers with poor asset management.
Maybe still their best asset though on the big league roster is Devers, and I just feel like this thing has gotten way more messy than it needed to be. The whole supposed benefit of both Cora as the manager and Breslow as the youngish GM coming in was supposed to be communication. Or at least one of the benefits. It doesn't feel like at any point there was a clear communication from front office to manager to player about just what was the plan with Bregman here. And if indeed, the plan was always to have him be at third base, there was never an opportunity, at least it seems, for Devers to air those grievances in private. Prior to that happening and kind of mission controlling that before it got to camp. If that wasn't always the plan, where is Bregman in all this? Like, did he come in? What position was he anticipating he would be playing when he signed that contract? Where was Cora? And in talking to Breslow, expected to have Bregman and Devers, who are arguably their two best players right now. It just seems like there were multiple conversations that were missed before we just went out and signed Alex Bregman and celebrated maybe the most major offensive everyday free agent signing that they've had in recent years.
Yeah, and I mean, I think since the last episode, that report from Sean McAdam has come out that Devers considered requesting a trade recently. in a private meeting with the Red Sox, and I just pulled it up, and this was an excerpt from it. It said, behind closed doors, Devers let the Red Sox know in no uncertain terms that he's still feeling aggrieved and disrespected. Meanwhile, to the public, he is the dutiful employee doing what he's told to do. And he also just said that Devers thought that the Red Sox were dishonest with him or not fully transparent about their plans to pursue Bregman or Arenado during the offseason. So, I mean, that to your point, I mean, clearly they didn't do this the right way, or they didn't think it through. And so I don't. You can't feel good about that.
Well, they were saying all offseason, like Devers is our third baseman. You'd even like clearly someone was leaking that too, because you'd hear it in reports too that like
Cora said
they're
it.
public.
Cora said
Yeah,
it.
they're
So it's
I
like,
know. And it's like, we're talking about an interesting dynamic here too, because like Cora and Bregman were tight in Houston. Like that's been a very well documented component of this. And one of the other things is like Cora and Devers since the beginning have been very tight. And there's been that role there. So now it's like you have two guys that are like, the bigger dogs on the team. Both of them have very similar relationships with Cora that happened at different times. And so it's just a weird dynamic, but I'd be pissed too, like if I were Devers, because he did get misled in a way. And like it's a separate discussion whether you think he is responding appropriately or not, but like I really don't think that is like him requesting a trade. I kind of understand that. And that goes back to the point I've had for a while, which is like you should want this guy to be wanting to play third base. You hear so much stuff. I mean, the last freaking third baseman that they signed to a massive deal was Pablo Sandoval. And the second the ink went dry, he stopped giving a shit. And so it's like, with Devers, it at least seems like there's an organic drive to actually play this role. And to me, it's like there was a way to make this work in a way that defensively and offensively works. And that's putting Bregman at second. And it seems like despite leaving the door open for that for so long, they never even so much as tried to do it. And so I think Devers would have every right to be aggrieved by it. Now he got paid, so he probably should just, deal with it and show up. And it sounds like that's what he's gonna do. But like I'm not put off at all with the fact that he's pissed. I probably would be too.
But my thing is like, what's the logical endpoint in this? And it's that, so what? Like Bregman plays third this year. Let's say he has a good season and he opts out, which probably is what the Red Sox want, right? Like they're saying all the stuff about Alex Bregman, but I bet they would like him to crush it this year and opt out. And then what? Like you're gonna move Rafael Devers back to third base after a year not playing it? It's like, how is that gonna how would that help him eventually become reliable at third base? And so like it feels like this is permanent. Like this is it, unless he goes to first, right? Unless they trade Tristan Cassis and Devers becomes a first baseman, which maybe that is the ultimate outcome. But if it's permanent DH, are you paying 313 million over 10 years for a DH? Like I don't see it. I can't imagine they think that's good. That's good business. And so I mean, I'm starting to come around to the idea that like a trade feels like, unless he goes to first, a trade feels like the most logical outcome. And I think there are a lot of teams that would put him as their third baseman, that they'd be fine with that if the rest of their infield defense is fine. Um, yeah, I don't know which teams off
Well,
the top
you're
of my head, but I think there are a lot of teams that would be just fine with him as their third baseman. And so I just wonder if this does go the way of a trade, because you don't pay a DH that much money.
I mean, they're completely obliterating its value then by not letting him play third at all.
That too. Yeah.
Because it's like, all right, so you're going to trade him to a team because you don't want to pay 30 million a year for your DH. Like that's perfectly plausible. What team's going to want to do that? And so, and another interesting dynamic in this is, talking about the relationships component of thing. There were so many talks about the Bogarts and Devers dynamic. I mean, Bogarts for years is like, I'm not moving offshore, and he's in San Diego now playing second base with a smile on his face. And it's because Hassan Kim was a better option up until
he's also in his
Tampa.
30s at that point. So like I think he knew he was a liability at short.
He knew it was come. Yes, but he fought that tooth and nail for a while. Like the timeline moved up for Devers, but it's just like, yeah, I have a hard time believing that they're just gonna be like, all right, Bregman opted out. Like Devers is our third baseman again. Like it's almost like they're going to have to treat this as a platoon situation.
One quick note that I was just thinking about this on Bogarts is, just remembering how everybody, the the crying over when Xander Bogaerts signed elsewhere, and like what I thought were bogus reports about how Chaim Bloom was just almost in tears when Bogaerts signed. Like, no way, they never wanted to sign him. And so first, obviously, they got Christian Campbell with that comp pick, so that's huge win, Red Sox. Like, who would you rather have, Bogaerts or Campbell? Campbell, and it's not a discussion. But going into the season, truthfully, if you could pick one of the two players, who would you rather have, Xander Bogaerts or Trevor Story? I mean, I think it's at least close. And
Well, you at least fix your second base issue because Story's playing second in that situation, probably.
I think right now he's a better defensive shortstop than Bogarts, and I don't even think Story is that good at short because of his arm. But just in general, I mean, Bogarts is declining rapidly. I don't think it's at all outside of the realm of possibility that Trevor Story is the better defender and hitter this year than Xander Bogaerts. When a few years ago there was just outrage that they seemingly charted a course where Story would be Bogart's eventual replacement, and now it looks like it doesn't look like they were right. Like, I think clearly.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of water under the bridge at this point, right? I mean, Bogarts is gone; he's not a concern of theirs anymore. Devers, though, is still here, as is Trevor Story. So I do think that keeping Devers happy, or if you're planning on keeping him, is something that is important to do. Trading Devers would be a tough look a couple years after they've essentially were forced to sign him because they let Mookie go, they let Bogarts go, and they were facing a fan uprising if they had also lost Devers. I just look at it. It's not impossible to bring in a player, a star player, an all-star caliber player, in the same position of your best player, and for it to work. Like, that's not totally impossible. Because one comparison that I draw, and they're two very different players, obviously. But Bryce Harper, who again he's developed into maybe the ideal teammate in all of baseball. He was in Philly, came over from Washington as an outfielder. They acquired Castellanos to play right.
And they had Schwarber.
Well, they got Schwarber later. So Harper, outfielder, predominantly a right fielder. The Phillies, I'm guessing Dombrowski communicating with Harper that, hey, we're getting an outfielder. He's going to make us a better team. We're going to have you, through a combination of fitness and health, going to become our designated hitter. Then we get Schwarber, right? Schwarber can't really play the field, so he's going to become our designated hitter. We're not going to retain Rhys Hoskins. That's going to make us a worse team, but now Harper, we're going to move you to first base. He's going to put in the work to become a first baseman. So it's just like, it does, like, it is possible, and I don't think it is a coincidence that you have an older school executive in Dave Dombrowski, where it's all about relationships and makeup and understanding the psychology of human baseball players, and a best player who is open to those conversations and flexible and willing to do what needs to be done to make a team be the best that it can be, versus Breslow, who, I'm not saying he's not a personable person, but the whole selling point, right, is that he's comes from an Ivy League background. He knows he's the new age guy. I don't know that he necessarily has those communication skills the way that an older school guy does. With Devers, which I don't know about, how receptive he is to those conversations compared to Harper, but it just doesn't seem like that sort of back and forth happened in a way that generated a positive environment in that clubhouse, the way that it's been shown that it can happen if you do it, if you go about it the right way.
Yeah, I wonder, I'm trying to remember back to if A-Rod, I'm sure the Yankees told A-Rod before they traded for him that
that's where my head went to, was A-Rod and Jeter. But I feel like we might be backing ourselves into the take that this is a broad problem from Craig Breslow, because if you go back to last offseason, the messaging was so all over the place from ownership down to him. And like, I think Tom Warner doing the full throttle thing backed Breslow into a corner where it was like, I don't think his idea of full throttle is going to be the same as Warner's. And then he has to like explain this away. But every offseason, it seems like there's this ambiguity about like what their direction is or where they see some of these players going. And like, we talk about trading Devers. I wouldn't do that unless you rework Bregman's contract. Because what happens if you trade a pissed off Devers this year and then Bregman opts out and goes somewhere else?
Meyer at third.
Meyer, yeah.
Or Campbell.
You mean the perpetually hurt Meyer, or
right.
Campbell, who we just said like we don't really know what position he actually plays. Like again, that's you could very quickly wander yourself into a hole where you're in a bad spot. Like the purpose of them at signing Bregman was because they finally had all the core pieces ready. The guys Devers, he's ready to go. Like Durant, he's a star, he's ready to go. The prospects, like they've got those guys to fill in the gaps, but they're supposed to take them to another level. This offseason was supposed to be adding the veterans on the margins to help things out. Walker Buehler, Chapman, and then obviously Bregman. And so what really are you accomplishing? Like trading Devers is setting yourself back unless you get an absolute haul, but you wouldn't be trading him at peak value because everyone knows he's pissed right now. And if you're really going to corner him into being a DH, then who's going to be, again, paying 35 million a year for a DH? No smart team would do that.
I think it's going to be like just a fascinating storyline next offseason. And maybe and usually these things sort themselves out, but I wondered like next offseason, it's like, do they entertain trading Devers? Unless if they don't sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr., right? Like I don't know if you can get rid of your franchise slugger without already having another one lined up, and maybe that's Vlad Guerrero. Or by that time, is it clear that Roman Anthony is your franchise slugger? Like that could very well be the case, right? Or does Tristan Casas finally have the season everyone thinks he's capable of? And then you look at it and you're like, we don't need Devers as much as we did a year ago. We have other guys who have emerged as those middle of the order threats. Would Vlad Jr. even come here if Devers isn't here? Like, is that a part of what makes Boston intriguing to him, is playing with Devers if they're friends? Like, so I just think there could be a lot of layers to it next offseason, including, to your point, Logan, like, does Devers sneak in at first base a little bit this year to, kind of keep his value up? So I just don't, I mean, this storyline might like quiet throughout the year because winning solves everything. But then, check back in the offseason and see where we're at, because I think this will be, a real storyline to watch.
That's not even getting into either the fact that being a DH is like a very difficult thing to do. Like JD Martinez was
right?
very
good. Some guys do it, some guys can't do it.
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking about a player who's already pissed and ambivalent about the idea of doing this. And it's like, I feel like they've had a tough time getting Devers to stay engaged when he's playing at third base, too. I mean, to tell you when that guy's only doing something once every 85 minutes that he's gonna, keep up at the offensive production he has, like, this is a precarious thing, just putting him at DH.
At the risk of giving people take whiplash after just bashing the Red Sox plan for the past 30 minutes, I want to get into our predictions on this Red Sox season, because
we're all very bullish on
shockingly,
the Red Sox.
I think we are all very, very high on them. So just to take it around the horn real quick, I want you guys to, as succinctly as possible, not in one word, but like as succinctly as possible, give me A, your realistic, and B, your ideal, like if everything cuts the right way, prediction for the Red Sox. I think realistic, like at the very minimum, they are absolutely going to be in the playoff race, in my opinion. I think they're going to be in the division race. I think they're going to be a wild card team. That's my realistic. Things don't even have to go perfectly, in my opinion, or they shouldn't even have to go perfectly for that to be the case. Ideal, I think they're a very real contender for the pennant. They have the pitching. They have the depth, as we've been talking about. Their depth has almost been a curse. And if everyone is healthy and happy among their star players, they have the high end talent as well. I don't know how you guys see it from both the realistic and an idealistic standpoint.
Yeah, I think for me, realistic, make the playoffs. Like I think they have, and then I'm just sort of assuming relative good health, right? Like you never know how that's going to go, but let's just say they stay relatively healthy. I think they have to make the playoffs. There's no excuse not to with that roster, and everything go well. Be in the ALCS. They're built both in terms of their rotation, both in terms of their defensive flexibility, and in terms of the long relief, the quality of long relief arms they have. Maybe they don't have a bona fide closer yet. That can sort itself out as the year goes on, but they have the starting pitching depth and the long relief guys to really succeed in the postseason. We know Cora likes doing the rovers and mixing and matching that way. Like they are built to play the way that Alex Cora wants them to in the playoffs. So I think getting into the ALCS, at least getting there, is that's a really good outcome. But if nothing else, I think they have to make the playoffs.
We haven't even gotten into the fact that Liam Hendricks is getting his teeth kicked in every time he goes out. Which brings me back to my take that Justin Slayton should be the closer. But in any event,
Might be by the midseason. I think that's entirely
he might be by the end of April. If Hendricks doesn't pick up quickly. So I think their floor is third in the East and making the wild card. Like that's I think anything beneath that would be a massive disappointment. Like I think we're all in agreement they have to make the playoffs this year. I don't think it's far fetched to say they could win the division.
I think they
Um,
should. I think they're the favorites, especially with
I-
Garrett Cole undergoing
yeah,
Tommy John. I think the Red Sox should be the favorites.
they are. I mean, the only advantage the Yankees really had, like it wasn't in the lineup, so it was in pitching, and their bullpen is not as good as it's been, and their rotation now is decimated. I mean, they might not even have Clark Schmidt to begin the year, so like that's three of their guys. I mean, freaking Marcus Stroman, they were trying to trade to anyone that would take him, and he's going to be like their three starter now. So and like the Rays are coming off of a bad year. They finally have all their pitching healthy, so like the Rays will be better. The Blue Jays, who knows what's happening with them, but if they have a bad first half, they're probably just going to fire sale. And the Orioles, like we keep thinking there's going to be this rapid ascension for them. And it's like they kind of got the like, are they hitting their ceiling? Are they like a low to mid 90s win team? They lost Corbin Burns. So like the AL East is still probably the best division in baseball, but it has gotten a little weaker around them. So barring um, widespread injuries or just massive underperformance, I think it's highly plausible and should be the primary goal to at least win the division. And once you get to that point, this feels like a team that's actually pretty well designed to compete in the playoffs. Like you think about the rotation component of things, it's like this team with a short rotation would be great if it's just Crochet Hauk Bueller. Like I would totally trust that in an early playoff series. So I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh yeah, they're definitely winning the World Series or they should win the World Series. But I do think that the pieces are there for them to threaten pretty much any team in the league.
So I think one thing I'll quickly add, I think one of the biggest variables in the AFC East this season, or the AFC East, the AL East this season, is where the Rays are playing. They're playing at Steinbrenner Field, the spring training field, and so I know the dimensions are comparable to a major league field, but like, how does that play out? Like, does it feel like a bandbox when they're in there and the offense takes off? Do visiting teams feel the same way when they come in and they're like, this is just being in a spring training park feels like they can just launch all the time? Or like, what about the humidity? Like, it's going to be insane in that park. And do the Rays have the advantage because they're used to it being there most of the time? Where, I mean, I know it's humid up here too and other parts of the country, but Southern Florida is different. And I think that's a factor. Like I just, how the Rays home field situation affects things, especially if the division's competitive when it's just a matter of a few games. I think that could be a big part of it.
I mean, not to mention the fact that I think in June, July, and August they're playing like 34 or 51 games on the road or something like that. Like they're gonna have a weird year. Now, granted, because they're playing at Steinbrenner Field, it's modeled a little bit after Yankee Stadium, so they're gonna be helped by the short porch and right
That too,
there
right?
too. So that changes things a little bit too. Giveth and taketh away. But
So
Yeah.
as of right now at the sports book I'm looking at, the Yankees are still the favorites for the American League East. The Red Sox are third. Which
Behind
I
the
think,
Orioles.
yeah, which I think is I I know the Yankees always get kind of that sentimental bump. But they're also the Yankees, their over under for win total
it's got to
is
be like 88.
88 and a half. And the
Yeah.
Red Sox is 86 and a half.
Yeah,
So,
that's
um,
I,
sorry, go ahead.
no. I'm just shaking my head. Like I just
yeah, I'm just shaking my head at that too. Like, what about this Yankees team? I mean, so Stanton, we might never see Stanton again. Um, the top end of their rotation's fried with the exception of Max Fried. Like I don't get what this could be a bad year for the Yankees.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
I
know.
also just think like the people who set these over unders for these teams, like I know the Red Sox ultimately ended up hitting, I think, right on the mark last year for their over under for wins. I think it was right there, like what 82 or whatever. But like I remember when that came out before spring training, and I was like, this is not an 81 win team. Like they have the talent if they stay healthy to win over 90 games. And I mean, I this isn't revisionist history. They played like that for much of the season, and if it wasn't for like three key injuries that was not an 82 win team. So I just think I don't know, the people I just don't put any stock into the people that
I
set those because I don't think they really know what they're looking at.
I don't either. I want to say, and Ben, if you still have these up, I think I saw that the Rays were like 81 and a half and the Blue Jays were like 78 and a half. It's like, I get it. Some team in the division's going to have to lose, but they reduced the divisional schedule. So it's not like, just by virtue of being in a good division, you're going to, walk yourself into like 40 losses.
Yeah,
But
78 and a half for the Blue Jays. Although,
like,
I think I can't remember which one of you said it. I think there's a very real possibility of like a May, June, not maybe not May, but like a June, July fire sale for that club.
yeah.
So I think you gotta keep that in mind that it might be, yeah, they might be like a 500 team tracking for until midsummer, but then from late July on, we might be looking at a Pittsburgh
Yeah.
Pirates, Chicago White Sox caliber club in Toronto there.
That team is all veterans that you can dump at the deadline. It's Barrios, Gossman, Scherzer. Like you can tell that they're trying to compete, but they're also safeguarding for the fact that if things go sideways, Vladdy's not going to want to come back, and they're going to have to start selling off pieces. So that and the Rays too. I mean, if the Rays are only hovering around 500 at the deadline, they're going to sell. So there's just there's a lot of talk about how good the East is, but there are very reachable variables here that could set some of these teams out. Like a lot of teams are on the precipice of, entering rebuilds. The freaking Rays have, they were a 99 win team in 2023, and Isaac Paredes is gone. Randy Arozarena is gone. You go down the list. They obviously missed McClanahan last year, and they get him back, but like the Red Sox, Orioles, and Yankees are probably the only teams that you can lock in as like they're probably going to go pedal to the metal the whole year long.
My just random Red Sox prediction. It's not I don't know if it's a bold prediction, but I think Marcelo Meyer spends the entire year in AAA until rosters expand in September because I think it takes both of a Trevor Story and a Rafaela injury for him to get up. Um, and he also has a lot of things to work on. His platoon splits are
He
really
needs to
bad.
play
So
more.
yeah, so it wouldn't surprise me. Like I think Campbell starts the season on the roster. Anthony's up at sometime in May or so, and I think Meyer stays down there all year.
I think, this is really lined up Red Sox Yankees wise to be a very fun season. It at first glance when I saw the schedule and I saw that they were not playing against each other for the first 2 months of the year and not playing each other until June, I was like, well, that's stupid. I still think it's stupid. I mean, that they don't
I
play
hate
each
it.
other more often. I want the heavy divisional rivalries back, but I get what MLB's doing. They're tracking towards getting rid of the American National League. But I digress. I think by the time that first Yankees Red Sox series comes around on June 6th, and then they play each other again at Fenway the following weekend, I think there's a possibility like we're going to know where those two teams are headed. I think both of them will still be in the race to an extent because I don't think the Yankees injuries is going to catch up with them to that point yet, although their rotation is already decimated. Um, and then I look at it as like then they play again in late August and again in mid September. I think there's a real potential for this to feel like a you know an old Red Sox Yankee season this year.
Yeah. It's too bad the Red Sox like really lack an asshole. Like I mean they have Aroldis Chapman, but I'm thinking in terms of like, like Pedro, you could count on like stirring shit up,
I don't know. I think
I
I
during
think
think
Crochet can fill that, and Bregman.
I think Bregman is kind, and
yeah,
I
so
mean
Bregman
yes,
can fill
yeah,
that.
and I mean
Bregman's an asshole.
yeah,
You're
in
right. I
and
remember that
right.
from when he was an Astro.
I mean that yeah,
But
that's a compliment to him. Yeah.
I know nothing about Crochet's makeup because he's been either recovering from Tommy John surgery or playing for a terrible White Sox team. So I can buy that he might have that edge, but I need to see it first.
What are the odds that by midseason, Roman Anthony has like the Emperor as his nickname?
Yeah, there's going to be some stupid Red Sox
Instead of
branding
like the all
opportunity
rise
around
for,
Roman Anthony.
yeah, instead of like the all rise in Yankee Stadium, it's going to be like the scene from the Gladiator where when Roman Anthony comes up, everyone goes the thumbs up, like Joaquin Phoenix or something. I don't know. That's where my mind goes. I spend too much time thinking about possible nicknames.
No, you know what, Dakota, for once, you've led us into a perfect segue because the absolutely cringy broadcast nicknames or hackneyed whatever you want to call it is a great way to move into our thoughts on the state of the Celtics broadcasts.
The
And if
Wolfcast.
and
I'm
if we
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
and if we want to talk broadly about the state of the NBA viewership, we can do that as well. Listen, I'm gonna be as nice as I possibly can here. As you guys know, I have long not really cared for the Celtics basketball team, but at the very least, I thought that their game broadcasts were entertaining. Mike Gorman, best in the business, and Tommy, love him or hate him, I loved him. I thought it was you watch it for the entertainment purpose, and for a guy losing his crap over a foul that it was clearly not a foul, Tommy. Like, stop it. Oh, it's a travel. No, it wasn't, Tommy. No, but it was still enjoyable. And now I don't enjoy the product. It has nothing personal towards anyone who is working on it. I am sure they do a tremendous job. I can't do it. And there's been a lot of big games recently, even though there's nothing else on at night to watch. I can't bring myself to watch that product anymore. And just the NBA broadcast product across the board is one that I am not caring to engage with, especially this season more than any other.
Yeah, it's unlistenable. It's terrible. I mean, there seems to be, and I'm the youngest one of the three, okay? And I think a lot of the people who are fulfilling these roles are people who are around my age, who are like just around 30. And I don't know what the hell they were teaching in other journalism schools, but there's something about like every young broadcaster now is just way too over the top and
Newhouse
way
kids.
too
It's all
much of
Newhouse
it.
kids.
It's all Newhouse kids, I know, and they happily let you know they went to Newhouse for Christ's sake. But I just, it's okay if, a pick and roll that leads to a nice finish. It's just a pick and roll that leads to a nice finish. They didn't just win the 19th freaking banner, like tone it down a little bit. It's the same thing with the new White Sox broadcaster. I'm not sure how closely you guys followed that. The guy who replaced Jason Benetti, a historically bad White Sox team. And this guy's like calling out the haters on the broadcast and like screaming his head off for like sixth inning, Eloy Jimenez home runs and shit and stuff like that. So there's just a weird thing about that makes it unwatchable. And like Scal too, I can't listen to either because he's store brand Tommy at this point. And it's I'll put it this way to kind of tie a bow on it. Like whenever there's an option to watch a game on NBC or it's a national broadcast, I will always watch the national broadcast. And I'm not like that with other sports.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think. Listen, I mean, Drew Carter seems like a nice enough guy, and I think he's like obviously good at his job, like he knows what he's doing and everything, but he's just like not what I want in a broadcast. I think to your point, Ben, the charm of that Celtics broadcast was like, and I think there's room for one homer on if they were good, interesting, you know, lovable homer, then there's fine. There's room for that on every broadcast, I think. And that's what it was with Tommy. Whereas Mike Gorman, sure, obviously he's rooting for the Celtics, but he usually played it mostly straight. Um, and the problem with the Celtics broadcast now is both of them are homers. Like it sounds like you're at the bar with your buddies
Unreal.
and you're crushing beers, and every great play, everyone's flipping out, whoa, no, and like having these over the top reactions. And it's just, I think it's unlistenable. It's cringe. And I'm with you. Like I actively, like if I have an option, I go to a different broadcast because I just can't handle it. It's so over the top. Scal's enough. Like Scal is over the top. I know a lot of people don't like Scal on the broadcast. I think he's fine because I do think, unlike Tommy, he has a good knowledge of where the modern NBA is and like the nuances of it. Which we can all complain about that analytics first and all these kind of things, but I think Scal has a good understanding of that, and that helps the broadcast. And then yeah, he's a homer on top of it, and that gives it personality. But like Drew Carter just basically being a cheerleader throughout it, I can't handle it.
Yeah.
It was I'll just quickly say it was so obvious that Mike Gorman was a homer. I mean, if you listen to his radio hits, he'd be like, "Can't possibly trade Tyler Zeller," and it was like, he very much was that way. But there's something about the delivery, like it seemed casual, it seemed comfortable. Like even when you knew he was angling for the Celtics, the Drew Carter thing and Skell is just the screaming. It's like they're filming a slapstick comedy. Like
Yeah,
I don't get it. It's not a good way to listen to a game.
You know, I know that a lot of folks look back fondly on the Sports Center heyday, Dan Patrick, Stuart Scott, Keith Olbermann, all those guys, Kenny Mayne with their catchphrases. And it does seem to me like a lot of game broadcasters, play-by-play folks who are coming in now are trying to be that. With the irony is that none of them actually saw that at the time if you're 30 years old. But it seems to me like a lot of them are trying to be Stuart Scott, omitting the fact that Stuart Scott was not a play-by-play announcer. He was a highlights guy. He was an anchor. And doing that when you're giving 30-second snippets of highlights or, pre-post game stuff, that is fine. That's entertaining. It can grate on you, but that only lasts a couple minutes. So then you're back to the game. 48 straight minutes of that is beyond annoying. And I think that, you talk now, okay, we got the kids coming in with their stuff. The thing that grates on me even more is folks like, and I know he's very popular, I'm not trying to start a feud, Mark Jones, with his Gen Z slang at 63 years old. 63 years old. It is the Steve Buscemi meme. Like, hey, fellow kids. It is so, I can't listen to it. I cannot listen to it. And Dakota, it's funny, you mentioned, well, Scal, understands the NBA, so there's a value there. To me, that kind of makes it even worse because I don't like the way the modern NBA is being played. And I realize it's effective. They're the national champions. I get it. The world champions. But I don't also need you sitting there telling me that I'm wrong if I don't like this. Don't tell me that what I like or don't like is wrong. It's me. I'm the viewer. I'm the person who's here to be entertained. I will decide what I like and what I don't like. And if you tell me that what I don't like is wrong, click. I'm done with you. I don't I don't feel like watching a bad product and also being told that the product that I feel is bad, that I am somehow an idiot for that.
No, I'm with you. Yeah, and I mean, I don't mean necessarily that Scal's knowledge, like, I just think like it does in some respects it helps having someone explain the deeper parts of the modern NBA at times, whereas Tommy was like he just wasn't up with it at all. Like by the end, he was just a character. He was the old grumpy man, and there was a charm in that for sure. But you know, it is nice to have someone sort of educate you on like specific parts of rules, specific kinds of screens, all this kind of stuff. Tommy wasn't really doing that. I mean, it sounds like I'm like picking Scal over Tommy, and I'm not. I swear I'm not. But I'm just trying to like give some sort of defense for Scal. But like that's really to me the only remotely redeeming part of the broadcast. Like that's it. And I don't even know like how good that part of it is. I think the rest of it, you know, his just fanboying and then Drew Carter. Like I can't imagine what they're going to be like in the first round of the playoffs. That
Jesus
that's going to be a
Christ.
tough listen.
Yeah,
I'm
like we're
not going
gonna
to watch
have
it. I'm
to.
going to watch ESPN. So.
Yeah, we're gonna have to listen to them do cartwheels over them walloping an 8 seed. Um, Jesus. Yeah, I mean, it's just it feels like broadcasts are really going in that direction. And it's like to me, it loses a certain amount of depth. Like I know, I don't have to shill for Nesson broadcasts anymore, but like I always thought that even though Andy Brickley was a homer, the way he went about it was usually measured enough to sort of counteract how over the top Jack Edwards could be for so long. And like I think the combo now with Judd Surratt, who can definitely get worked up, but is not in the same way that Jack is, they're a good fit together. But it's like you can still be a homer without being like, I mean, in some ways mean spirited in the way that Scal can be, and just not freaking annoying, and it's just neither of them on that Celtics broadcast seem like they have any interest in trying to walk that line. And it's like you can have one of those guys. Like I watch a ton of Big East basketball, and like one of the combos that you get a lot is Jason Benetti and Bill Rafferty. And Bill Rafferty's kind of like that. And this is national technically, so they don't have a horse in the race, but it's like he can get a little bit worked up, and he can be kind of the more like silly, traditional, older broadcaster, but it's like it works because they balance each other well. But they just put two guys who are all the way up here on the Celtics broadcast, and it's like, man, I hope that is not the tandem when the Celtics become bad. Could
So
you
I was just
imagine?
gonna say, like, I think that's a great point because I think the mark of a good broadcast is like you're enjoyable or watchable when the team's good and when the team's bad. And when the Celtics had those bad years during the little mini rebuild and throughout the mid 2000s and all that, like Mike and Tommy were still very good and it was consistent. And I just like this feels like a front running broadcast where it's like it's
Yeah.
easy to fall out of your chair and root and hoot and holler when they're blowing everybody out winning championships. But to your point, what happens when they suck? Like
Yeah.
how do they shift gears? I don't know if that broadcast has the ability to do it. I mean, thankfully, it might be a while before that even comes into play. But yeah, I think that's a really good point, Logan.
Not only should you not need to do that for a Boston Celtics broadcast, you shouldn't do that for a Celtics broadcast. And when I say you shouldn't need to do it for a Celtics broadcast, that's something you do for a New Orleans Pelicans broadcast, a Houston Rockets broadcast, a broadcast where the fans don't actually care.
Right.
And you might get someone to tune in to one game a month, and you have to tell them how great Houston Rockets basketball is so that they'll keep tuned in. The Celtics fans already care. You don't have to tell them everything is awesome all the time. So you don't need to do that. On top of that, you shouldn't do that in a Boston sports broadcast because Boston fans are not like that. Boston fans
Right.
are at their happiest when they're bitching and miserable about the stupidest freaking thing in the world. So when you hop on as a Celtics fan and all you see is, this is great, yay, 3-pointers, hoo, 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 you're like, okay, I don't feel like this is representative of me as a miserable fan anymore. I don't just, yeah, I know they're good, but like, I don't want you to have to tell me they're good. I'll decide when they're good. And when I think that something is stupid, I'll tell you it's stupid. it's just, it feels so not Boston sports, and it felt Boston sports when you had two crusty old guys that were just complaining, and your sideline reporter was someone who did not look like they were straight out of central casting from a sideline reporter. You're kind of like, this kind of seems like a Mickey Mouse enterprise. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I
You know,
think
one of
that's a
my
great point, because I think Mike and Tommy were the perfect encapsulation of what the Boston sports experience is. It was a good balance of overreactive and emotional and angsty, but also knowledgeable and ultimately positive. Like it hit all the right notes of sort of what I think is a nuanced fan base. Whereas like there's no nuance in this broadcast. It is just everything is awesome
yeah.
all the time.
Yeah, it can like I don't understand that. I mean, one of the things I always defend is I do kind of like Dave O'Brien because I think that he lets the analysts add some of the colors, some of the inflection that needs to be there. Like my favorite analyst in Boston sports history is Dennis Eckersley. Like I love listening to Eck on Red Sox broadcasts, and you could tell he wouldn't always like he could just watch what was right in front of him and react appropriately. And he would speak in weird terminologies and he was silly and stuff like that, but it was still measured. And
It
like
felt like you were
ultimately,
watching the game with him, you know?
yeah, yeah. And it was just like, this feels like they're just screaming at me for 2.5 hours about how great the Celtics are. It's like, well, if you would just shut the hell up for a few seconds, I could probably watch and see that for myself. And, and again, calling basketball, calling baseball, two wholly different things. But it's like, a good broadcaster does not need to try and steal the show in order to be doing justice to what is happening on the court or the field or anything like that. And I think that's what I'm ultimately getting at with these guys who are in their, late 20s, early 30s. Like they feel like they have to be freaking Johnny Most the entire time. It's like if that's not who you are and if you don't have like the if that's not well established, then like it just comes across as fake. People can see that.
Well, and I think to your point, well, a little bit of a segue here, talking about two things that are not the same, baseball broadcast and basketball broadcast. You know, I think we have to mention the broadcast last night, the Celtics and the Nets. I think that made it abundantly clear that play-by-play or in-game calling is not the same thing as sideline reporting or writing or, being an analyst, during or after games.
So kind of latest stage of what you're getting into, because a lot of people might not have watched. And to my earlier point, I did not watch that random Tuesday night game because I chose to do something else with my time.
Yeah.
I watched
couldn't
the
hear
first
what'd you
four
say? Did
games.
you want me to explain what it was?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear you. So basically, what happened last night? It was an all-female broadcast on NBC Sports Boston. It was Abby Chin, Jackie McMullen, and Diamond DeShields, I believe, WNBA player, I believe for Chicago. And yeah, it was just, I mean, it was unlistenable. It was a new low.
I had no
Um,
idea there was an all field. For the record, I didn't not watch because it was an all field. It was good. I didn't watch because I saw it was Celtics Nets and it was on NBC, and I was like, nah, no thanks.
it was Logan. Did you watch it?
No, I did not. I didn't even know that was happening either until I Googled it right before we started recording.
So, it's one of those things where it's a tricky topic to talk about, obviously, but I think my sort of take on it is it was something that it was all bad and no good. Where it was like as far as doing an all-female broadcast, I mean, I think that's great, and those already exist, and that's obviously a good thing to happen. But I think this is a case where it did more harm than good, because it felt, watching it, that nobody in NBC Sports Boston like thought about it beyond it being an all-female broadcast. They didn't vet it out. They didn't have them work together at practice. Maybe they did. And if they did, and it was anything like it was last night, then someone should get fired for greenlighting it. Because it sure came across like they said, let's do an all-female broadcast and just roll with it. These three girls all obviously know basketball, and
Women.
they all do. I mean, you're talking about an excellent sideline reporter in Abby Chin,
Three women,
one of the best
not girls.
basketball journalists ever in Jackie McMullen, and someone in Diamond to Shields who plays professionally. So like they obviously know what they're talking about, but calling a game is a very different thing. And it came across like it was just a shallow pander. Let's put three women in those seats, and it'll just work. And it didn't. And I felt bad watching it because like it just like you could tell they had no chemistry. They weren't comfortable. They were just not in their element in that spot. And it was you talk about homering. I mean, it just seemed like they didn't really know what to do, so they just resorted to homering. So it was the Drew Carter scowl thing to the max. I mean, it was oh wow, like the whole time there was no actual calling of the game. For like a 7 minute stretch, Jackie McMullen just kept talking about Tommy points. Like a player would do anything, and she's like, "That's definitely a Tommy point. Oh, that's a Tommy point. He now has a chance for the Tommy Award." And then towards the end of that session, that part Diamond to Shields goes, "Who's Tommy?" on the broadcast. She said, "Who's Tommy?" And Abby Chin said, "Celtics legend Tommy Heinsohn." And she goes, "Oh, right." Uh, and all Diamond to Shields really did was like every minute or so she'd pop in and go, "That's a foul." No, that's not good. Like she looked like she was uncomfortable in that spot. Um, and it was bad. And again, like I just think it's one of those things where they put all of them in a bad spot, putting them on that broadcast. They should have vetted it out more, practiced more, had them work together because it was really, really bad. And it's one of those things where if the goal was to prop up female broadcasters, make all female broadcasts more of a thing, like it's one of those things last night that I think makes easy fodder for people who approach that topic in bad faith. Because it was not a good product at all.
It does. If you don't have a vision for it, if you don't have a plan for it, like I said, I am watched, so I'm not going to weigh in on the substance of the broadcasts, but it's like you need to have a vision for it. Otherwise, you look like you're just trying to get your company a pat on the back.
That's
Because
what
if
it
it
came
is,
across as, 100%.
yeah, because if it is half baked, if you're not positioning these people for success, I frankly am of the belief that like if you're going to do something like that, you should instill it for like a week or something like that. You need to give it a chance to like have some legs or grow or something like that. But no one's going to develop chemistry when you're getting three people who might not even know each other. I mean, I'm sure Abby Chin and Jackie McMullen at this point have a rapport, but it's like it's a weird dynamic. You have to commit to it. And otherwise it does just come across as pandering. It comes as, box checking and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, if you're serious about that, like to me, if you're, trying to put off the vibe that you care about elevating, women in broadcasting and things like that, then doing a one-off thing against the trash ass Nets is really not going to do much to sway my view. Like I'm not sitting here this morning, giving NBC Sports Boston a standing ovation over this. It's like, all right,
The
cool.
opposite.
Like you did it. Yeah, it's like now what are you going to do about it? Like, do you want us to just all say, wow, that was good for the peacock for doing that? And it's like, okay, now what? What's the material benefit that you've done now?
You know what it sounded like? It sounded like when you're watching a broadcast and they bring in like sort of a third guest for a few minutes or an inning or whatever, and it's the broadcast ceases to be a regular broadcast and it's more three people shooting the breeze and like passively commenting on the game that's happening in front of them. Like if they bring in Brad Stevens for a second, or if this Red Sox broadcast has someone from the Jimmy Fund or whatever. But it was like that for the entire game.
No.
But with the Homer stuff turned up to 13. Like it was. I'll be fully honest. I muted it. I pulled out my Nintendo Switch and I started playing Zelda with the game in the background. I couldn't listen anymore. It was that bad.
I was watching St. Francis versus Alabama State. But I was watching the first four. I was like, I'm not even putting on the Celtics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to be like too harsh because again, I think like all three of them, like their credentials speak for themselves. Like they're among the best at what they do in their respective fields. But like for NBC Sports Boston to just think they could plug them into that spot, which is an incredibly difficult job. It's not like, I
Yeah.
think they just, the only way I can read it is like number one, like I said, a shallow pander. And number two, that they've sort of deluded themselves into thinking that this is what fans want. Like, oh, fans love the Drew Carter scout broadcast. It's just nonstop homering and sounding like you're at a bar. So who cares if that's what this is too? And it's like they're not. I can't imagine that they have any true indicators that that's what fans want to hear. Um, Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so.
I have no opinions on that. I think I would have almost rather have. No, I would. I would rather have Abby Chin than Drew Carter. Sorry, Drew.
Well,
Maybe
I
she could be
agree
better.
with that.
Maybe
Yeah.
she could be better. I'm fairly confident she could be.
Well, she
Even
could
Jackie
be.
McMullen.
It's just like it was clear that I mean, maybe she's done it in the past. I don't know, but there wasn't actually like a calling of the game. It was just shooting the breeze with each other, the three of them for like 48 minutes, and there was no like actual calling of the flow of the game like you think of when you think of a broadcast. And so like maybe someday she could be much better than him with like practice and developing it, but it just didn't sound like that at all. But I agree with you. I'm very much open to a world in which Abby Chin replaces Drew Carter. I wouldn't mind that at all eventually.
So another media oddity that occurred here in the last week or so is the coronation of the 2026 Super Bowl champion New England Patriots, based on their series of free agency moves. So, not unprecedented when a team makes a number of noteworthy signings, that they have a press conference, ownership, general manager, or whatever the executive's official title is, and coach, which the Patriots had. People had different feelings on it. I didn't think it was that out of place in the world of sports, but I think it was, the timing of it was a little odd, and given the recent history of Patriots media, it was a little eyebrow raising. So my question for you all for our behind the keyboard segment is, if you have any specific thoughts on that Patriots press conference, you can share those. But I just kind of wanted to get your guys' feeling of the strangest, or maybe a press conference or a press event that struck you. You had a moment where you're like, huh, this is a little odd.
Well, I guess I'll go first. So the the main one I have is when I was covering the Bruins Cup run in 2019. The second round, they played the Blue Jackets, who were coached by John Tortorella at the time. And that series ended up going to 6 games. They won in game 6 in Columbus. The game 5 was a close game that the Bruins ended up winning, I think at the last second, or it might have been an overtime game. I forget the specifics at that point. But afterwards, it was one of the few, perhaps the only, like press conference settings or media settings I've been in with John Tortorella. And he didn't disappoint because he was pissed. And so I found, and I'll send this to you guys in the Zoom chat so you can read it for yourself. But I tweeted out the transcript at the time because he was just so irritated by everything. So the very first question was about the tight game and what they needed to open up offensively. And he says, "What's the question? We got some guys to play." And then after a couple more like ho hum hockey questions, he goes, "You know the answer. Don't ask stupid questions right now, guys. Ask me some questions that mean something, not that you have the answer to," which I actually think is a very good line and something that every journalist should remember. Stop asking stupid questions that you already know the answer to. I know sometimes you just have to get the quote, but so he's just irritated with everything. He was annoyed with the refs. He was annoyed with their play. Everything except for the energy they hated. For some reason, it's the funniest part of all of it. The second to last question he gets asked after all of this was about how Vladislav Gavrikov, who was playing in like his first NHL game, depth defenseman, who they just threw in at the last second, like, "What'd you think of Gavrikov's play?" And just goes, "He was fine. He was fine." And that was it. And that was the press conference where he guaranteed they were going to be back in Boston for game 7. And then I don't believe they were. So that was probably the good one. I have another one was covering Celtics Media Day in 2019. You guys, I'm sure, have all covered media days where you basically just sit in a room with a podium and they just cycle players through all day, and you literally get like everyone. And so I remember one of the people was Max Struess, who has gone on to have a very good NBA career, but he was a camp invite for the Celtics. He was right out of DePaul. And no one thought we were getting Max Struess. Like no one thought that like they were gonna bring the camp invites in. So he sits down and everyone's just kind of quiet. We're like, we don't know what the fuck to ask this guy or what the heck to ask this guy, pardon my language. And so he takes like one question, then eventually leaves. And so they get ready to bring in the next camp invite. And Brandon Chin, who was, I don't know if he still is, but he was like the head PR guy at the Celtics that time. Before they bring him in, he walks into the room and he's like, can you guys like please ask him a couple of questions? And then they're like, okay, here's, Vincent Poirier or somebody like that. And yeah, they're just weird things like that. But I haven't been in like massive tirades, they are who we thought we were kind of ones.
Um, so yeah, I have one. I will quickly say that, two that I wasn't around for, that I've heard from people who were there that are the weirdest ones were, um, in no particular order, the Rob Gronkowski motocross one with the helmet on. When there were all the questions about his retirement, and he took part in that motocross event at Gillette and did the whole thing with the helmet on and was going, I go vroom vroom, I'm on the bikes, and said nothing about his future. I heard people say that was a surreal experience. And then the other one is the sort of the main Deflategate press conference, the Mona Lisa Vito one, where the people who cover the team that have talked to me about it said that number one, it was as busy as the media room has ever been, like just bursting at the seams, and that a lot of national reporters, or not a lot of national outlets, sent their reporters. So like there was a CNN guy there, and someone has told me that like that CNN person tried to ask Tom Brady a question, and he was like, what do you say to fans that now question whether you do things the right way? And Brady was like, didn't really answer it, walked off the podium, and then that reporter stood up and said, "What about the kids, Tom? Tom, what about the children?" And like it was just that stuff. It was like national reporters sort of grandstanding and turning it into a circus. So I wish I was there for that. But my actual pick is Belichick's farewell thing with Kraft a year ago. Um, it was just weird on all levels. Like the fact it was in that big auditorium, and they presented it as something that it wasn't. He was fired. Like, and Kraft admitted as much on that barbershop show, whatever, the shop on HBO. He said I fired Bill Belichick. So there was no mutual parting of ways, but they both paraded out there, put on this sort of friendly vibe, like this is a good day, this is a positive day. And Belichick gave that speech where he was clearly uncomfortable, um, teared up for a brief second. Kraft spun it as a full positive. And I just was sitting there, and it was actually like a day after I found out that Nesson was cutting the Patriots beat reporter job. So I was in my own, like, what is my future thing? But I was there anyway. And it was just surreal seeing it, like, watching it, like, wow, this is like the official end of that whole Patriots dynasty. They're trying to put this positive spin on it, but it's complete BS. I have it on pretty good authority that, like, at that same time that thing was happening, Gerard Mayo was down the hall shooting a video segment about being named the Patriots head coach. Like they filmed a segment for the Patriots video series about him being the coach, but he wasn't actually named the coach for a few days. And the reports about him being the coach were still a couple days away. But like they knew then, and they were filming the video. And at the same time, they're having the Belichick thing. Um, all of it. Like it was, and then afterwards, like a lot of people trying to say like that hit all the right notes. It was perfect. That's the way it should be done. And I was sitting there like, am I crazy? Like that was the weirdest, fakest, most bizarre end to that 25-year run that I could have ever imagined. It was weird to be in there for that day.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I have to add a quick one that I forgot. This isn't a weird press conference story, but an unusual situation I ended up in was when Zdeno Chara signed with the Capitals. It was during COVID, so everything was being done over Zoom. So it actually worked out well because I was able to connect to his introductory press conference with the Capitals. Um, so, at that point on Zoom, once you get in, it's like webinar style. So you have to raise your hand, and then that basically forms a queue, and they're like, okay, these people answer. In most situations, I'm sure this is how it worked with like the Patriots and whatnot, is they kind of go in the like hierarchical order that you'll see of like, okay, the people have been here forever, they can ask the questions first or whatever. So I had a question or two that I was like, all right, if this doesn't get answered, I want it. So I go into the room and they start the thing and they're like, all right, use the raise hand function. So I use the raise hand function, and the first question goes to the Capitals team reporter. And the second question, I think, went to someone from Monumental. Um, and then after that, they called on me. And so, and the first questions were just like, how do you feel about being in Washington? How do you feel about this and that? And there were so many like open storylines with this departure from the Bruins. And I figured every Bruins reporter has their hands in the air. So I was like, they'll probably call in Kevin Paul Dupont and Fluto and all these people first. And so I'm just sitting back and they're like, Logan Mullen, Nesson. And I was the third person. I was like, shit. And so I was like, well, I guess I have to ask him the line of questioning about like, why did you leave? Like, what happened with the Bruins? I forget what specifically I asked, but I was like, I'm gonna like get called for like the tertiary layer questions. And so I was just prepared with those. And then I was like, did the Bruins offer you enough? Like, I forget what it specifically was, but that's one
That,
of where I was personally uncomfortable because I was caught so off guard.
that's a good one. And I'll give one quick other one before Ben gives his. Is that this was it was either it was I think it was 2 years ago. It was the same summer where Jack Jones got caught with a gun at Logan Airport, and we hadn't talked to him since then. And then, remember that happened in May. It was right after OTAs, and so we're now in the preseason. And I think it was after the first preseason game, maybe the second. I can't remember, but regardless, it was after a night preseason game at Gillette, and we were finally getting Jack Jones for the first time since the gun thing, and uh, we didn't know much about what it was going to be. And so, a couple of people that are sort of the veterans on the beat got everyone together and basically in their own way said, there are only four, we only have time for 4 or 5 questions. These are the people going to ask them. Sorry to any other young reporter that wants to get in there. And in that situation, it's always Dan Roach first. Dan Roach always gets the first question. But we go down after the game onto the field while the game was winding down, and then it goes off and we all head out towards the sideline and Jack Jones comes across and it was just like a madhouse. It's kind of funny looking back on it because ultimately it wasn't that big a deal, but we just hadn't gotten to talk to him, right? And the scrum got so big and the cameramen were fighting so hard to get a shot. One of them but had their shot blocked by, I won't say the name, but a veteran and highly respected Patriots reporter, and the cameraman kind of like gave him like a get the hell out of the way guy, or like was kind of a jerk about it, and that reporter turned around and gave the I've been here for years, like get the hell out of here, like they started fighting with each other, and Jack Jones took like 4 or 5 questions and got out of there. But that one was weird because it was just like the urgency around it and everyone making a huge deal and how big the scrum got and how much people were jockeying for position. And the fact that like half the beat got like basically told without being told, like you're not allowed to ask a question in this thing. It was weird.
I'm sorry, we will get to Ben's, but that just reminded me because I covered exactly one Red Sox game at Fenway Park in my time with Nesson, and it was the Joe
One more
Kelly
than
fight
me.
game. Shut up. You cry so much about that. Um, it was the Joe Kelly fight game. And so I remember going into the locker room after that, and the scrum, they stood Joe Kelly up. They should have just done a press conference, but they stood Joe Kelly up in front of the TVs. Like everyone swarms over there. And I remember just being like, I'm hanging out at the back of this. Like, there's going to be a transcript. This audio is going to be everywhere. Like, whatever. There's a cameraman behind me who's like shoving around. He's like trying to get his camera up. There's like so many people. He's freaking out. And so finally he just goes and he grabs some chair nearby and starts standing on a chair. And a Red Sox PR person is like, and it's like a leather chair. They're like, hey, like you can't be standing on that. Like get off the chair. And he looks down at the person. He goes, make me. And so, and so the person makes him. The person starts pulling the chair away. And so just know that the entire Joe Kelly press conference, while he's got like the half black eye, his shirt's torn up, he's standing right there. There's some like probably, WHDH cameraman who's getting yanked off a chair by a member of Red Sox PR, like going back and forth with them. So that was a weird one. I was just thinking about the subjects on the podium, but yeah, I've seen insane stuff from
That's fun,
what's
and
actually happening in the scrum.
that's fun. And keeping with the bit of cutting off Ben before he can give his, I'm gonna so I'll give one quick one. And this was at MetLife Stadium after a Patriots Jets game a couple years ago, and it was the game where Mac Jones hit Sauce Gardner in the nuts. And I was in like the Jets media area, like the right around where the locker room was, where Sauce Gardner said that, and I heard it, and I was like, oh, and I before anyone had time to tweet it out or anything, and I like as soon as he finished saying it, I like dipped out and like basically wind sprinted over to the Patriots media room before Mac Jones got off the podium, and I just like hastily like got around the corner, stuck my head around the corner. I'm like, Mac, Sauce Gardner just said you hit him in the groin. Do you have anything to say about that? just like I just like flew in there to ask about him hitting him in the nuts, and then as soon as he finished, I dipped back out and like ran right back across the other side. I just remember hastily going back and forth to ask people about Mac Jones maybe hitting Sauce Gardner in the balls.
I hate to gas
At one
you
point
up.
thinking like, what is my job? Like, what am I doing?
I hate to gas you up, but that's actually very good boots on the ground journalism. Like
Yeah.
me talking last week about like the lack of necessity of beat writing because people just want to go and write a game story. It's like that would be justifiable of like that is why you send someone there because he heard something in the visiting locker room and then efforted to go and get it, a response right away. So
Well, we weren't able to ever get Mac Jones in the locker room. We were only going to get him at the podium. So like that was the one shot to get a comment on it until the following Wednesday, And so like at that time, I'm like, I got to do stories that justify being sent here in the first place. So,
yeah.
that's an
Good
easy
for
one.
you, Cody.
Yeah. I was like,
You would have got a pat on the
that'll
back
make
if
Ben
I was
happy.
your editor.
Good,
Yeah.
good on you.
All right, Ben, anything to add?
I guess not.
The
No, those
following
are some
week-
pretty good stories.
The following week, I probably did 15 stories with the phrase sack tap in the headline. The Mac Jones sack, the Sauce Gardner sack tap. Bill Belichick offers candid take on Sauce Gardner sack tap.
Not to be confused with the Brian Burns ankle turn or
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, mine was also sort of a what am I doing here moment. It was the press conference after the Celtics Nets trade, where the Celtics, it was a press conference with Marshawn Brooks, Keith Bogans, and Chris Humphries. I think that those were the only three players.
Legends of the game.
Legends of the game. And as you can imagine, that was a very, very odd press conference because everyone knew what this was. Everyone was aware that it was not going to be much permanent or illustrious moment in the history of the Celtics. I don't believe that Chris Humphries and Keith Bogans like even like got dressed up. Like I think that they were just like wearing normal clothes. They're very gracious about it, especially Keith Bogans. He was a pro. He was very clear that like he did not want to be there. And he's kind of the cautionary tale that like he got a good contract. He was on a good contract for a Keith Bogans, and it ended up being a curse though because once they made that move, the speculation was, Bogans and Humphries are gonna be moved like almost right away to a contender or somebody worthwhile, and Marshawn Brooks is kind of like the future piece that they got. I remember they could not move Bogans for the longest time because his contract was too good for him, and no one wanted to pay Keith Bogans that money. So it was really tough, and Marshawn Brooks just again, I know he was very young at the time, but Humphries and Bogans were professionals about it. In the press conference, Marshawn Brooks was not. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world, and that is the way he ended up looking throughout his NBA career, that he wanted to be anywhere else in the world, but having to deal with this. And not surprisingly, he did not turn out to be the centerpiece of the next great Celtics team.
Was Gerald Wallace there? I'm looking back at that trade because they had Chris Joseph and Gerald Wallace too, and I remember hating Gerald Wallace with the Celtics. Like for some reason, Gerald Wallace was always the one who was talking after those games, and I remember listening to Gerald Wallace that year and being like, "What is this guy's like goal?" Like, God, I remember he always got on my
Gerald
nerves.
Wallace must have been there, but I don't remember interviewing him there. But he must have been there, or maybe he wasn't. I don't know, but I distinctly remember the other three.
He sucked for the Celtics too, didn't he? I remember like there was some excitement, like he
Gerald
used to be so good
Wallace,
for the Bobcats, but like
yeah.
he wasn't good
Oh,
at
he
all
was
for the Celtics.
amazing for the Bobcats. I love Bobcats era Gerald Wallace.
Yeah.
Awesome player.
Who were some other great Bobcats from those teams? I think Kwame Brown was not part
I
of
mean,
those
Tyson
teams.
Chandler. Technically Raymond Felton was on those teams, but I don't
Oh
think he was
yeah.
ever awesome. He was. Emeka Okafor.
That's right. He
Yeah.
was okay.
Steven Jackson.
Steven Jackson. Yeah, that was a great video game team. Tremendous.
Late career Alonzo Mourning, Raymond Felton. I don't know. Were they really on those? I'm just Googling it, right? I don't
I don't
remember
think
Alonzo
Alonzo
Mourning
Mourning
on
was on the
Bobcats.
Bobcats. No, he was.
That's
He
what
retired.
Google's AI is saying, and I think it's wrong.
No, he retired a Heat, or whatever you call it, a singular Heat. He retired a degree.
Do you think we could do an hour podcast on the Charlotte Bobcats if we had to?
Certainly.
I mean, I could do plenty of Yukon content on that with Emeka Okafor being the centerpiece there. So I'm still really locked into the 2013 Celtics here. I didn't realize Keith Bogan's only played 6 games. Like I knew the him being untradeable part. Like you know who he's a good example of is Solomon Hill. Like Solomon Hill for 2 years, like rookie deal, was a useful player, and he might have been one of the guys who benefited from that weird 2016 free agency thing where like Timothy Mozgov was getting an insane contract and stuff like that. But I just remember, yeah, him flaming out kind of quick.
So let that be a lesson to you. You know, you get
Wow.
that bag, but you could also get stuck on the 2013 Boston Celtics and have nowhere to go.
Well, you know, I'd love for to our point, let's really tie a bow on this. Let's hear Drew Carter and Scout call that Celtics team.
That's what yeah. No way.
Absolutely not.
Gerald Green wasn't on that team, was he?
He might have come back.
No, he was.
No. Gerald Green did end up coming back
Yeah, I didn't
in
know
the
if that was planned.
2010s. Yes.
Yeah, he was 2016. That was actually
okay.
the year that like Loki covered the Celtics for WEI. It was 16 because he had come back from Russia and he was during actually the media day, during his media day press conference. I remember him saying the moment he realized he really wanted to get back to the NBA was he was playing in Russia. He was like, I'm having soup for dinner every night because I don't like the food and I'm living in Russia. And so he's like, I just wanted to get back to the NBA. And he ended up back at the team that got him there in the first place.
Little did he know
there's
things
your,
actually went
Gerald Green.
well
And
for him.
He was a
yeah.
yeah, he was a useful player. And then I think he had like a decent run with the Rockets. Like he had a nice end to his career for someone who did have to go overseas. But yeah, I'd love to see Drew Carter get worked up over Vander Blue and Jared Bayless.
The second biggest Russia-U.S. storyline from 2016. The return of Gerald Green.
All right, you guys have anything else to add?
No, I can't top
yeah,
that.
we covered a lot of ground today. Appreciate both of you for your scheduling flexibility. Everyone, thank you for spending a hour plus with us today. For Dakota, for Logan, as always, this has been Ben, and you have been watching the NPC Sports podcast.